Okay, welcome back as we continue to look at the internal structure of relative clauses. Okay, and I want to review quickly what we discussed in the last video. The last video we discussed if the antecedent is a noun, I mean obviously the antecedent is a noun, but if the antecedent is a person or has to do with people, we must use the relative pronouns who, whose, or whom. Actually, let's put them in the order we discussed them last time so we don't get confused. Who, whom, or whose. Okay, remember a couple of quick rules here. If the antecedent, if the antecedent is human, I must use one of these. If the pronoun is doing the action, it is acting like the subject, doing the action. If a linking verb is used, like is or were or are, or this is receiving the action, receiving the action. I have to look up how to spell receiving. I think it's spelled like that. I before E except after C. It just doesn't look right. 1 second. 1 second. Maybe I'll look it up really quickly. Yeah, I before, I guess the rule does apply. I before E except after C. Sometimes rules aren't always true. So get rid of that little thing there. I apologize for my misspellings here. Receiving. Okay, the action. So whom is the object if it's receiving the action, and whose is the possessive. Okay, so remember, subject, object, possessive, and that's what we did last year, our last video, and we're going to be looking at those more this video, but I'm going to introduce you to some other relative pronouns. Now let's go ahead and look at the relative pronoun list again. Up here we learned if the antecedent or the noun the pronoun is referring to is human, we must use who, whom, or whose, and we discussed that last time. Okay, now if it is non-human, we're going to use that or which, and if it's the object or the subject, doesn't matter, so it's a little easier. But even if it's non-human, if it's possessive, we still use the word whose. Okay, there is no possessive for that or which. We use whose again. Okay, if it's a spatial noun, we use where, and if it's a temporal noun or a time-related noun, we use when. Okay, and we'll look at some of those examples here in a second. So that's what we're going to introduce you to. We're going to introduce you to these terms right here, or these relative pronouns. Okay, so let's take a look here. The nature, okay, the relative pronoun always immediately follows the noun that relative pronoun refers to. This noun is called the antecedent, okay, of the relative pronoun. For example, look at the following sentence. We need to talk about the courses that you are going to take next term. Now let's take a look at this. The antecedent is courses. It's not human, so I have to use the word that. So my adjective clause begins with that. Now I'm describing what courses are. Which courses? That you are going to take. Okay, next term. See how that clarifies what I mean by courses? Which courses? Well, the one that I'm going to take. Okay, so that's an adjective clause because it gives you more information about the noun, courses. All right, and because it's not human, my adjective clause needed to begin with either that or which. And you know, this is a little technical, so I don't know if we're going to really get into that. So you can just put all of them as that. You're not going to be too it's going to be sound correct all the time if you use the word that. We might change that up later, but right now that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's take a look here. There is a difference between when you use them, but I don't know if we're going to go that far. Okay, it says the antecedent of the relative pronoun that is the noun courses. Even when the relative pronoun is possessive, the possessive must refer to the possessive form of the antecedent noun. For example, in the following sentence, the organization whose offices you visited was written up in the magazine. The organization is the antecedent because it's a possessive. We use the possessive. Whose offices you visited. Which offices were visited? The organizations. So it's use the possessive here. Was written up in a magazine. Whose refers to the possessive form of the antecedent noun organization. That is, you visited the organization's offices. The organization whose offices you visited. So you can see whose is the proper possessive. It says the nature of the antecedent also exerts control over which relative pronoun you use. If the noun is human, we use who, whom, and whose. The choice among who, whom, and whose, we already discussed that and when to use it, okay? A subject, right here is the object, right here is the possessive, okay? If the antecedent is not human, we must use that or which, okay? And right now we're only going to use that. We're not going to worry about which right now, okay? We'll talk about that in another chapter, all right? So if it's not human, we use the word that, the relative pronoun that, okay? If the antecedent refers to space, we're going to use where, and if it refers to time, temporal or time, we're going to use the word when, okay? And here are some examples of that. If you can look down here, the examples are small, but it says human. This is the young man, so I must use either who, whose, or whom. Okay, so let's see if it's the object. Obviously, they know it's the object. I was telling you about. Oh, I is the subject, but the action is the receiving action is whom. Whom I was telling you about. Who was being told about? The young man. Okay, so object. It's receiving the action. This is the computer. This is not obviously non-human. It's computer. Oh, that I was telling you about. So we use that because the antecedent is not a human. Man is human. Antecedent is not human. Computer is not. So we use that. This is the place. Ooh, spatial noun. Where we agreed to meet. Okay. This is the time. When. Oh, so if it refers to time, it's when we agreed to meet. So we're going to be taking a look at these examples, and then you're going to be practicing on your own of which relative pronoun to use at which time. All right? So let's go on. It says fill in the blank with an appropriate relative pronoun. The antecedent noun is in bold and the adjective clause is underlined. Okay? I know a Chinese restaurant where we can get really good dim sum. So a Chinese restaurant, I know a Chinese restaurant, and then of course it's temporal. I mean, it has to do with a place, right? So we have to use where. All right. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's take a look at this. Oh, these are a little small, so we're going to have to just look closely. Actually, I'll make it a little bit bigger for us. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, let's try this and see if this is a little bit bigger for us, so we can oops. Well, okay. We'll just do with the second one then. It says, if you can follow up here, we'll just look at this one. It is a book. Message really influenced me. It is a book, or the message belongs to the book. So I would have to use whose, the possessive. Whose message really influenced me, okay? He is staying with a cousin. Well, this is... he is staying with a cousin, a name. Oh, well, the name, the cousin's name. So that's a possessive. Whose name is Williams? Okay, so the name, the cousin owns the name. Okay, it says he is staying with a cousin who lives somewhere in Brooklyn. Okay, this is the subject. Who? Why is it who? He is staying with a cousin who lives, because this cousin is doing the action of living. The cousin lives. Who lives? Okay, the action of the verb lives. Okay, we picked a date. We picked a date. Has to do with time, doesn't it? When we could all get together. Let me introduce you to my Uncle Jackson. My Uncle Jackson, so I have to use who, whom, or whose. Who. Why do I use who? Because that is who's doing the living. Who lives in Florida. Let me introduce you to my Uncle Jackson. I believe you have met before. Whom. Because I is the subject of believe. Met, right? Who's being met? Uncle Jackson. Okay, so that's go ahead and go through this, and remember that you're going to be looking at. Let me shrink this down a little bit. You're going to be looking at this, and there we go. All right, so you're basically going to be deciding which relative pronoun to use. Remember, if it is not human, use the word that. Okay, if it is human, you're going to use who, whom, or whose. Okay. If it refers to time, you're going to use when, and if it refers to a place, you're going to use the word where. These are the relative pronouns, and you're going to look at the antecedent and decide which one to use. Okay? So if you have questions, please come to my room before or after school, and I will help you out. You can also work collaboratively with each other, and we're going to continue to learn about relative pronouns in the next section. Good luck, and I'll see you later.